So, may I begin?
Yes, please.
A very good morning to all. I welcome you to the second Leadership Talk series, which is a series of educational and inspirational lectures from professors and experienced people from the corporate world to enlighten the students about various topics that cannot be otherwise experienced in the classrooms. LTS is organized by Professor Gaurav Sareen, an alumnus of IIM Lucknow, specializing in data analytics and information technology. He makes sure that through the series, the students get to have the best of industry speakers and leaders' experience so that we students can have an exposure to the corporate world before we formally enter it. Before I introduce our speaker for the day, please allow me to express my gratitude to the PGDM chairperson, Professor Shoma Mukherjee, Professor Gaurav Sareen, and Team Invictus for organizing such insightful events. On the behalf of the entire team of DSB, I would like to welcome Mr. Sumit Bhatia. He is currently working as the head of human resources at SE2 India and has recently completed his SHRM SCP certification and has more than 20 years of experience in the industry. Sir has done a variety of roles in his career journey and handled various international projects along with facilitating global leadership training, redesigning performance management strategy, participating as a core member in setting up a captive center, and leading the HR function. He has also worked with the Royal Bank of Scotland and Birlasoft. Sir has always enjoyed working with people, engaging with them through various forums, learning from them, supporting them, coaching them, and leading them. It has helped him reach his current role, which he believes is all about making the experience of the people in the organization better. Thank you so much, sir, for choosing to be here with us today. Your expertise, experience, and exposure in the industry will be greatly helpful to all of us. After today's session, I hope all of us will be able to have a greater understanding of the leadership, which is an essential requisite in today's world. We are honored to be your audience and eager to hear everything you are about to share with us on strategic human resources and emotional intelligence.
Thank you
Over
so
to you,
much.
sir.
Thank you so much, Ruchi, for the warm welcome. And thank you, Delhi School of Business, for the opportunity. Uh, Gaurav and I go long back. We were classmates in the college, and it's great to be meeting Gaurav again after a very long time. I think we've been interacting a lot recently, but also, sometime back we were very actively interacting on the LinkedIn and other areas. So it's good to see Gaurav, as well as great to be here to interact with you. I think uh, the opportunity that has been provided is to talk about strategic HR management and also about emotional intelligence. And for me, I think it's a very important topic right now as we look at the world where it's heading towards, and how HR is playing a role in that movement. So I'll talk a little bit about that. I know you are students of MBA and in core HR and other stream, so I'll not go theoretical into what is SHRM. I'll share my experience around it and my perspective around how things are going to move forward. I'll also like to keep this session a little bit more interactive. So if you are all comfortable, and I like to see all of you as well. So if you can, show me your self, your videos on, and whenever I ask you something, feel free to put it on chat or unmute and speak. I think we need to get that connection back in terms of speaking to each other, seeing each other, because we're all going through this whole virtual world, being away from each other and just connecting through virtual. So let's see each other more. Uh, Feel free to show your videos and also unmute, like I said. So quickly I'll share my screen and present. Okay, it's let me know once you're able to see it. Hopefully it's visible.
Yes, sir, your screen. Yes, sir.
Okay, great. So my first question to all of you is, what do you understand by human resources, and what do you understand by human resource management, and then what do you understand by strategic human resource management? So just to understand what your thoughts are around these three key areas that we are here to talk about. What is HR? What is HRM? What is strategic HRM?
So may I share something?
Absolutely, please feel free.
So good morning, sir. My name is Shashank Singhal. So in my opinion, talking about human resource management, so every organization is managed by certain people. So we have people working to manage finances for an organization. We have people uh, taking care about the marketing aspects of an organization, people taking care about quality control in an organization. So now we need certain strategies which can manage these people as well,
Hmm.
at their level of motivation, their work performance, their retention abilities, everything is managed as well as improved as we go ahead in an organizational journey. That's why we need human resource management as a specific branch, as a specific subject to be taught in management colleges.
Hmm. Okay, thanks for sharing that. Any other thoughts? Any other uh, views around what HR, HRM, strategic HRM is?
So I'd like to share,
Hmm.
in my opinion, strategic HRM is basically concerned with formulating specific strategies for achieving the organizational goals, or in terms of how to manage their workforce and how to manage other processes or whatever the organization's into.
Okay, okay, thank you. Any other thoughts?
Good morning, sir.
Morning.
Sir, according to me, strategic HRM means that finding right people for the right job so that we can uh, efficiently get the work done with the people and bring their skills into light.
Okay, okay, thank you. Anyone wants to talk about how HR has evolved over last few years? Any journey that you can think of, or when you look at HR, 10, 15 years ago versus what HR is right now and where it's heading towards. Any thoughts on that journey, on where we are right now?
So I think now it is more people centric, and earlier, in my opinion, it was more based on what the organization wants, but now it is more focused on what the people of the organization want.
Okay, that's a good point. Any other thoughts? All right, so great points. Thanks for sharing all of this. I'll share my thoughts around this, right? So my perspective is HR, as you look at uh, historically, was created as a department that could do administrative tasks related to people. So whether it was managing certain policies, certain processes, certain tools and systems, ensuring that we are looking at employee data from a perspective that when you hire somebody, which department they will go to, what will be their designation, what will be their role, and where will be put it in the system, who will supervise them. So it's all administrative part that was done, that was looked upon as a historic HR. As we look at what also at that point, it it had a very negative connotation about what HR is, right? Because everybody would think about HR being somebody or some place you will go to for issues, right? Where you want to resolve certain things, where you have certain certain problems, and if somebody from HR would call you, you would definitely think about something is wrong, right? And that's what the whole connotation was. The third aspect of this is when organizations used to formulate an HR team, they would primarily think of it as a team that they would tell what to do. We want this, you get it done. We want people, you get people for us. We want to train people, you train people for us. We want to do certain aspects of movement of people, exit people. You do what we tell you to do. What has moved from that perspective is HR playing a central role. And as some of you said, it's become more people centric, and it's become more important function rather than just being a administrative aspect of it. It's become more strategic, if I can say that. And how has that happened is because now organizations are moving towards uh, the needs of the people, right? They be putting people at center. People centric is something that you said. So we're moving towards something that is more people, that talks more about people and keep people at center, and looks at how can we evolve or revolve everything around people. Progressive organizations are always looking at now HR as a partner rather than as somebody you would tell what to do. It's now more about let's collaborate and understand how we want to take this organization forward. And that's the whole journey that has transpired over last few years. Is now we are at the seat, we have a seat at the table, if I can call it that way, right? So we are at the top leadership level. So if you look at the CXOs, you always have a CHRO at an organization. You always have somebody from a people side of things to be talking at leadership level, to plan, to strategize, and to do a lot of things around that. So that's the change that has happened. If you look at top leaders right now in the world, you will always find few of them have come up the curve from an HR background or are more people centric as leaders. And that's also a huge shift in journey that has happened. Uh, you may have heard about Rekha Menon, right? Rekha Menon is the chairperson and a managing director of Accenture, and she comes with a strong HR background, right? She was the lead of HR, and she looks after a lot of HR, and she's transformed a lot of HR practices in Accenture. So she's a force to reckon with right now, and one of the top women leaders in the world, as noted by multiple organizations. You look at Lena, Unilever's CHRO. You look at Josh Burson, you look at David Green. These are leaders who are now known for their perspective, for their future focus, what they are analyzing right now, and how they see HR moving forward. And that's the shift that's happening. If you look at this visual that I've put together, it's more about HR being one of the cogwheel, right? It was very siloed cogwheel, so to say, and where it has moved now is a part that is running the organization, right? Very central. So we have multiple cogwheels, as one of you also said, multiple departments that we have, and HR is one of the central parts that enables the transformation or the journey or ensuring that all other cogwheels are running around it, right? So that's the shift that has happened. When we look at strategic human resource management, it talks about what kind of strategy is the organization going forward with, and how HR is helping transform or fuel that journey of strategic for the organization. So like I said, I think it was more about administration, back end, and now it's moved into more leadership position. So HR is leading from the front a lot of initiatives, and that's the strategic human resource management that's happened. There is human centricity. So we revolve everything around human. Let's put humans in the center and let's create everything around it. So there are multiple aspects of what you will read around why this has become more important, why progressive and the top organizations are now calling humans as the most important assets, right? Not tools, not processes, not technology. It's human. Not even money, not even finance. It's all human. That is the most centric, most important asset, and that drives everything. And that has what brought forward HR into becoming more strategic partner for businesses. Few of the things that HR help with is analytics, and very important right now. I think over the last few years, we've seen a lot of transformation and shift in the focus on analytics part of it. So we're doing multiple level of analytics, right? So we're looking at data itself, looking at various data that HR captures through the journey of employee, the employee data, uh, the performance data of an employee, how employee is shifting towards from the start of their journey towards their exit, the whole life cycle data. Uh, Second aspect to it is also people analytics. It's not just data analytics, but people analytics. So understanding the pulse of people, what are people saying, what is happening right now, what is the current state, and what is future state, right? So the whole analysis behind it is an important aspect of strategic HRM. The fourth aspect of that is more about envisioning the future. You create a vision based on your analysis of where we are, where people are, what people want to do, and then create a vision for future and help the HR as a central part helps the organization create that vision for future. Let's take an example of a BPO industry. Right, in a BPO industry, it is important to be more process oriented. Right, it's important to be innovative. It's important to look at how you are taking a process and managing it very well, right? So, and you're helping other organizations managing their processes. Now, if you look at another trend that is happening in the industry, it's all gig work, right? So you have contractors, you have small part-time employees working on it, and it's very apparent in industries like like Swiggy, like Amazon, where they hire somebody, but they're not on the permanent payroll. They're gig workers. They hire when demand comes in, and then you let them go when there's no demand. Let's and an example around that is the whole pandemic that happened. In that whole period, initially everything was under lockdown, and we saw a lot of organizations, especially uh, you know Uber, Amazon, who weren't able to deliver anything, not services perspective. So they let people go because they were not their permanent staff. They were gig workers who were hired to do certain things. When pandemic went ahead with easing out things, and lockdown eased out and things started to happen, people were still at home, not too comfortable going out doing shopping, and Amazon suddenly picked up. And what that happened is they hired more people. Do they hire permanent staff? No, they still hire gig working because they don't know how these situations will happen. And right now they've hired tremendous amount of gig workers. Can you do that same thing in a BPO industry? Can you just hire gig workers? Can you just keep fluctuating around it? Can you just look at hiring thousands of gig workers depending on the kind of work that comes in? You do that process and then you let people go? Absolutely not. Why? Because the core of business processing is understanding business, understanding the process. You need knowledge. You need to retain that knowledge, right? And that's the analytics that can help provide. So an organization, top leader in the organization would say, hey, I've heard this interesting concept of gig working, and I like to manage my finances. I don't like to keep people. uh, I don't know how future will happen, so I don't want permanent employees, so I'll be having flexibility around it. As an HR, erstwhile you would do what your leadership is telling you to do. Right now, you will help them think through. You will talk to them, you will collaborate to them, you'll show analytics to them and say, this is not right for our business. We need to look at what is right for our business, not what's happening as a great term that everybody's using, gig working, so we should also use. That's not relevant for our industry. So that kind of strategic help is what we can provide through analytics, and then create a vision. The vision could be, the leader has said, I want to be flexible around it. I can't have too many people. I need to have uh, manage my finances. So that's why I was looking at gig. So understanding, deep diving with them, understanding what they want to do, and then create a future vision for it. So if you have, say, 300 people in your BPO industry or in your organization, and your vision is to manage finances better, and you don't think 300 is the optimum size, you think probably you could do better with 200 people. And so my vision for you is to how do I help you go to that journey in 2 years, 3 years time frame where you reduce your workforce from 200 to 300. At the same time, you manage your finances, you still are profitable, you get better in doing the work, right? And that's the vision you create for them. Okay, I'll help you achieve that. And then it comes around formalizing the strategic objectives and how do you achieve that vision. And one of the aspect of that will be within that 300 people, do we have the right people? Are we hiring right? Are we retaining the right talent? Are we developing the right talent? Are we looking at the right processes, tools, systems? Can that 300, can the work of 300 be done by 200 people? And if yes, how? Do we need to look at uh, automation? Do we need to look at process transformation? Do we need to look at bringing in lean aspects in our strategy? Do we need to look at bringing in an expert to help doing this? So that's the formulation of strategy on how do you achieve that vision, and helping your organization understand that and collaborating with your leaders, whether it's your business team, whether it's your financial teams, whether it's your technology teams, just to collaborate with all of them and say, once you have the analytics behind it, once you have envisioned something that you want to do, let's collaborate to create that strategic objective. And that's where HR will help in doing that, is let's ensure that all different functions talk to each other and are not single cog wheel working in silo. That's not how an organization will become successful. Let's bring everything together so that once one wheel rotate, everybody rotates around it and ensures that the organization is working towards that success. That's the core HR brings in, right? Because let's assume that you formulate a strategy that we will reduce 100 people, but business team doesn't improve their processes, a technology team doesn't bring in automation tool. Will that work? It will be a failure, right? So you'll have to ensure that everybody is collaborating around it. And then the last aspect of strategic HRM will be looking at evaluating, monitoring how this success can happen. So it's not just looking at creating a strategy and then saying, look, we helped it, now you go and do it. It's continuous monitoring, looking at whether it's working. If not, changing it. Very, very important aspect of any strategy is creating a long-term plan, but also being very nimble in terms of how you can change your plans periodically. Review, monitor, change, so that it's not set in stone, right? You can't set everything in stone. Let's again taking an example back to what happened in 2020. 2019, by the end of 2019, everybody would have created a plan for 2020. Towards the first quarter of 2020, everything started looking shaky, where we don't know how the year is going to pan out. In 21, everybody is expecting everything to change with the reduction in numbers, with vaccine coming in, but we still don't know, right? So whenever you create a plan, you create it from a perspective that you want to go somewhere, and you create an objective around it, but you cannot be sure about it. So you'll have to be nimble around ensuring that uh, you can change it, modify it, and still try to slowly and strategically achieve your plan that you want to do. Maybe shift it a little bit, maybe halt it a little bit, all that. And that's again, because HR is centric to it, HR can help with all that aspects of how we can be nimble, how we are ensuring that we are constantly monitoring, uh, constantly looking at market, constantly looking at data, constantly providing that insights to the business. One other example around it could be, you know, uh, hiring was extremely difficult during last year because not a lot of people were looking at change. And if organizations still wanted to grow and still wanted to get people, there were different strategies that organization or HR had to apply. because we want to ensure we're getting the right people. Uh, there was also not a lot of people leaving organization, or attrition was also at low, because everybody was unsure about what was happening. At the same time, there was also a lot of organization that were laying off, because many organizations couldn't survive, and they said, we want to be able to lay off some people so that at least most important aspects of our business can be managed. So, and as an HR, people are not willing to change. People are not leaving organizations, but then there are organizations that are leaving people. So how do you find such people that organizations are leaving? And within that pool, how do you find the right talent for that? So that's a whole strategic change that you need to bring into your plan, so that it can still achieve your vision, but you change your whole perspective around it. So that's where my thought around how strategic human resources, and how we've evolved over the last few years is ensuring bringing HR to the central part of it, and ensuring that HR is at the leadership level in driving a lot of things for the organization. I'll take a quick pause here and see if you have any thoughts around that. Anybody who wants to share any other perspective from their point of view. Okay. Let's move on to understand the second aspect of it, right? So, emotional intelligence. Now, again, a question back to all of you, and uh, unmute and share your thoughts around this. What do you think is emotional intelligence, and why do you think emotional intelligence is a critical skill for HR, but also for the organization leadership?
So emotional intelligence, in my opinion, is basically having a control over your thoughts and how you respond to things emotionally, as in the inner state of your mind. So
Okay.
it is important because obviously, let's just say if you're sad at work, you cannot be as productive as you are expected to be. So it is emotional intelligence is important at your workplace so that you can maintain the productivity and not let your emotions have the better of you.
Okay. Thank you.
Sir, according to me, emotional intelligence is that a person is able to identify his emotions as well as his colleagues' emotions, so that uh, they can have a they can understand that what is going on, and they are not just working like a cog in a machine. So
Okay.
that's what emotional intelligence is.
Okay. Thank you. Mhm.
So, according to me, emotional intelligence helps the individual or the manager to understand each other or the employees properly. They can communicate better or they can promote the teamwork in a more effective way. So, emotional intelligence can help in those matters.
All right.
So, according to me, it defines the ability to identify and manage your emotions. Like when you
Okay.
are working in an organization, then you have to manage that.
Okay.
Yes, sir. According to me, sir, it's about self awareness and like being in an HR field, like we need to be aware of our emotions as well, and we need to like handle people. And suppose like if an HR knows like if an employee is facing any problem, then we should be able to understand it and we should be able to deal with it properly. That's why it is very important.
All right.
According to me, emotional intelligence would also help us to solve the problem of diversity in the organization, so that various diverse thoughts and feelings can be managed properly by having strong emotions with them.
Okay. Very great, very good points, all of you. I think very rightly said in different aspects of it. emotional intelligence is a 4-part, 5-part process, right? 4, I would say. One is self-awareness. The other is self-management. The third is social awareness, and then social management, right? So there are 4 aspects to it. One is looking at, are you aware of your own emotions? Are you aware of what what do you feel, or how do you react in different situations? Once you're aware of this, are you able to manage them better? So I know, for example, that I would get angry in certain situations. I would feel sad in certain situations. Am I able to manage it? And some of you said emotional intelligence is about self-control. I think it's more about self-regulation. Emotions are an important aspect of anybody. We can't do away with emotions. Everybody is built in with certain emotions. I would say with all emotions into us, but have different abilities to showcase that. We've heard a lot of time people say, it's bad to cry in front of somebody. People laugh at others who cry watching some emotional scene in a movie. Those are aspects that we've seen. But is it bad to cry? Is it bad to show your emotions? I don't think so. Doing it in the right way at the right time is not bad. Doing it in the wrong way at the wrong time is bad. So when somebody is making a derogative remark about somebody else and you laugh at that, that is bad. When somebody is making a casual joke about it and if you laugh, that's not bad. Right? So you'll have to understand emotions are all part of us. How we have been built through over the years, from our childhood to our education and through the different work environments that we've been taught wrong. We've always been taught wrong. We've never been talked about emotions in our schools. We've never been talked about social aspects, social skills, soft skills in our school, and that's the core problem of it. So EI is a skill, is a term, whatever you call it, has been uh, in the world by 20, 25 plus years, 30 years maybe. Right? First talked about in different sense in 1980s. Got a strong uh, perspective and strong force forward with a book by Daniel Goleman in 1995. And then from there on, it started taking more and more importance and becoming central aspect of a lot of discussions. And right now, in the last five plus years, it has taken a central seat in terms of how people are talking about your emotional quotient to be more important than your intelligence quotient for your success. And there's a reason behind it, right? Because you can gain intelligence by training yourself, by learning, by reading, by getting educated. You can get better in that. But if you ignore your emotional aspects of it, you will not grow beyond a certain level. There's an aspect of collaboration with others. There's an aspect of uh, team perspective. There's an aspect of leadership. Everything revolves around how you're able to manage your emotions as well as the emotions of others and the situation that you're in with others. HR being a central team that that has the core responsibility of managing people and everything around people. Hence, emotional intelligence is probably, according to me, probably the top 1 or 2 skill that an HR person need to have. Without that, it becomes difficult for anybody to be in HR, whether you're looking at uh, people, whether you're talking to people, whether you're helping them navigate through that, or whether you're looking at people data analytics, people management, people analytics, anything around that. You need to have emotional intelligence around it. Why is it important? Again, a lot of you said this. Let me formalize this in different ways on my own perspective around why EI is important. If you look at the left side of your screen, this is more about self. And if you look at the right side of the screen, it's more about social or others. When you look at self, the most important aspect is self-assessment. And if you don't have self-awareness, self-assessment, you will probably never become emotionally intelligent. So when you look at the Michael Jackson song called Man in the Mirror, very apt about it, right? If you're wanting to do something, if you're wanting to change something, if you're wanting to look at something, first look at the man in the mirror. Can you do a self-assessment and say, I recognize the 5 basic emotions. I recognize the 10 different flavors of those emotions. I recognize when I feel those emotions or how I react to those emotions. I recognize that. Once you get into that level of recognition, then you will be able to say, I know when this happens, I feel it this way and I react it this way, and and this may not be the right way, and hence I need to regulate or control or manage that better. And that comes the second aspect of self-management. One example that I share often is how do I understand uh, regulating some of these things. So I gave an example that I really like is, or 2 examples I should say. The one example is keeping a journal. Write down through the day, at the end of the day, or next day morning, whatever you feel like of previous day. Just write down the different emotions that you went through, or write down the different uh, touch points that you had through the day. Who did you interact with? What kind of email that you wrote? What kind of discussions you had? Just point by point. I wrote this email to this person. I interacted this. I had this meeting. And then for each of those points, think about how you reacted. What was your emotional aspect of each of those points? And when you think about those things, when you put down these things, saying, when I was writing this email, I was very tired. I didn't feel like, but I had to finish off writing this email. If I was not tired, would I have written that email better? Or when I was in that meeting, I was probably thinking about something else. And I had, maybe it was something personal, maybe there was some other work that I was thinking about, and I was not 100% in that meeting. My mind was somewhere else. And that's where probably I did not contribute well enough. And I think that meeting did not go well. I felt after that meeting that maybe I shouldn't have attended it. Or when I was interacting with somebody, I was slightly angry because the way the person was saying, and I said certain things that I shouldn't have said. If you put those thoughts around, you will start to think about how you can manage certain situations that happen in a different way the next time. To manage those situations, think about a concept called HALT. HALT. What does HALT mean? Hungry, angry, lonely, tired. Think about these 4 aspects. In most of your reactions, the way you react will depend on these 4 aspects of your reaction. Hunger could be not just your hunger from your stomach perspective, but your hunger for something, right? Your hunger to grow, your hunger to learn something. It could be that way as well. Your loneliness again could not be just your loneliness because somebody is not talking to, but loneliness of not being able to uh, do something with somebody, or feeling just alone in terms of being able to manage some of your aspects together. So it's not just from a physical perspective, but an internal emotional perspective that you need to think of. And when you put those HALT in different reactions, you'll realize maybe the meeting happened at 12:50, 1 o'clock, when it's my lunchtime. I was hungry. That's why I couldn't react. My mind was at that food that I wanted to eat. When you look at uh, discussion with somebody, you look at discussion and say, I could have reacted better. Why did I react that way? Because I was angry. Before hitting that send button on that email, I should have stopped, saved it in the draft, because that was not the right time to respond. I was angry at that point, right? So I'm just giving a perspective of how do you build that, because that's the foundation. If you don't have that correct, you will not be able to manage the others. And from an HR perspective, That's the core skill that we need to have, is how do we manage, how do you deal with people, how do you react with different situations with people and data. And if you don't understand your own self and regulate your own self, you will not be able to achieve that. Once you're able to regulate yourself, then you'll have certain skills that you will build in, which is confidence in dealing with different situations, initiative taking ability. So and that's important. Again, I'll talk about initiative taking ability because it's important from a strategic HRM. So as you start becoming a leader, as you start having a seat at table, as you start helping others, you will realize that HR will have to take initiatives or help others into starting something. Otherwise, if you take a backseat and say, let me think about what he's saying and let him do something, when something goes wrong, I will do it. That's not the HR role anymore. The HR role is to take initiative and say, go ahead and do it this way. Adaptability. Again, a very, very critical skill in terms of how do you adapt. And I talked about being nimble in different situations. As things change, as things evolve around time, situations will be there. How do you adapt quickly into different situations? Trustworthiness, again, a very critical skill for HR because they deal with people. They are looked upon as somebody you can trust. People share a lot of things with HR, thinking about if I talk, it will not probably be known to somebody else. So trustworthiness is an important skill. A lot of us have different aspects in our behavior that we don't realize. Somebody would be generally very talkative, right? And you'll come across a lot of people who like to talk a lot. And in that momentum, people tend to say things they don't want to say. So if I'm an HR person and I like to talk to different people, I enjoy talking, and I talk to X person, Y person, Z person, and I like to interact. In that discussion, few things can come out which I don't want to share with somebody, but because I just like talking, I will talk something else. And then I realize, oh, I shouldn't have said this. If you're not able to self-regulate, self-manage, self-assess, you will not realize this as being a fault, and your trustworthiness will go down. So just trying to relate some of those things. Cautiousness, of course, is the ability to be detail oriented, to not just look at things from a very high level. Again, as an HR, you need to be very detail oriented. If you're investigating something, if you're analyzing a data, you just can't give a very high level picture. You need to go into detail. Intuition, again, a very, very critical skill in terms of not just thinking uh, logically, but also intuitively, is what can happen. Can this happen? Can this happen? Can this be looked upon this way? Taking some intuitive decisions. Once you're able to do that, I think the other aspect is related to how do you work with different people. Empathy, uh, and we talked about human centricity, right? Everything that works is putting human at center. And that's where empathy comes into picture, is thinking from somebody else's perspective, putting yourself in their perspective. And there's a huge difference between sympathy and empathy. And just read through about it is at times we think we are being empathetic, but actually we are being sympathetic, and people don't like that. Building a political acumen, again, very, very important because uh, if you are in that strategic role and if you're helping business create strategic objectives, navigate and go into the future, you need to have an understanding of your political, of your organizational awareness, of your environmental awareness, not just internally but externally as well, is how your organization is moving forward, what the world is moving towards. And I gave an example of BPO. You just need to understand not just from your own perspective, but how other BPO industries are working towards, how technology is moving forward with. When somebody asks you a question about what are the trends in HR technology, are you able to answer that question very well? Do you know how HR technology is taking organizations forward? So your political acumen needs to be strong. You need to be a better coach and a mentor, and there's a difference between both of them. As an HR, you need to at times be a coach to somebody, where you help them realize their own potential and help them grow. At times, you need to mentor somebody where they would need you to train them on certain skill and then take them forward. It's you'll have to understand when it is required, and you'll be able to understand only when you understand other people. Influence, again, an important aspect is how do you influence different stakeholders in the organization. So you will talk to everybody from the junior most person in the organization to the CEOs and the board of directors in the organization. How do you influence everybody to be able to achieve certain things? Collaboration is going to be key, because like I said, you'll work with different functions. So you'll work with the business, you'll work with the finance, you'll work with technology, you'll work with other functions to take them together. And then you'll have to ensure that you collaborate with different people, uh, make sure they work as a team to drive the organization forward. Inspire others. One of the things of inspiring is being self motivated and self driven. If your own motivation level is low, you'll not be able to inspire people to take things forward. And then finally, resolve. Lot of times HR is looked upon as a subject matter expert in conflict management, right? So we do a lot of things in terms of resolving issues, and that's a key skill. You can't manage conflicts if you can't manage your emotions. So I'll again take a pause in terms of how EI is helping shape HR as a person and why it's important, and look at any questions, any thoughts, or any other suggestions that you have.
So I wanted to ask a question.
Yep.
So as you rightly said that there is a difference between empathy and sympathy. So my
Mhm.
question is on the same line. So in my opinion, sir, sympathy is something which is embedded in every human being. We feel sympathetic towards someone, we feel considerable and kind. But when it comes to the quality of empathy, that
Mhm.
is quite affected by our own perceptions. How we see things, we start analyzing things from that perspective only, rather than
Mhm.
looking at it from the point of view of other person. So
Yeah.
any thoughts on how we can actually overcome this barrier and can forget our own selves and can understand what is going on in the heads of the other person? Any thoughts on that, sir?
I think that's a great question, Sushant. I think it's all about looking at, first of all, I think once you understand different emotions everybody has, then you start realizing that why somebody is reacting in a different way uh, in different situations. Putting yourself in somebody else's shoe, as you rightly said, it's not an easy aspect to do, and it comes with a lot of cautious practice around it. Reading a lot of things, understanding and uh, visualizing or viewing different people is another great skill to have, and that's what helps empathy as well. So an example that I can give is, when you're in a meeting or when you're in a classroom, at times just sit back and observe people. Observe what somebody is reacting, how somebody is acting, what are they going through, how they are interacting, responding to different situations. Just observe. Observation helps a lot of things in terms of how you can see somebody reacting or different people reacting in the same situation. Another thing that can help is uh, asking a lot of things, questioning. So let's take an example again of you wanting to understand why this person is not performing well. As an HR, a business person or a manager reaches out to you and say, this person's performance is not improving. I have tried everything from my perspective. I don't know why his performance is not improving. You can do two things, right? You can sit and observe, but in that case, observation will not help because you'll not understand why he's not performing well. He will try and work the same way. He will try and do everything else. You need to ask questions to that person and get into a different mode of questioning, listening, rather than just telling him what it is. Just sit back, ask questions, listen, ask question, listen. So from a empathy perspective, I think that's a big aspect of how do you understand somebody else. When you ask question, okay, tell me, do you see any issues in your performance? Do you see uh, why your performance is not improving? The person may say, I don't think anything wrong with my performance, right? I think I'm performing well. Why do you think your manager is saying this way? Why do you think your manager is not agreeing to you and saying that your performance is not good? I don't know. I'm doing everything that I can. What can we do to improve your performance? What do you think can we take it to the next level? I don't know what we can do. Okay, let's look at what are your goals? What is your role? What was expected out of you? Are you meeting those goals? So it asking a lot of questions, going into deep detail. What you're trying to do is you're trying to understand the other person's perspective, and then once you understand that, you will be able to empathize better. Maybe the person is not getting the right support. The manager is saying that. Maybe there is a tool issue. Maybe his motivation is low because he's not getting recognized for things. Maybe he needs training. So those kind of things help, right? So observing helps in certain aspects, asking a lot of questions help in certain aspects, and then there are few other things that I can help. But hopefully this gives at least a good starting point.
Yes, absolutely, sir. Thank you.
Great.
So I would like to ask something.
Mhm.
People have been calling this year Human Resources 3.0,
Mhm.
since we're now being asked to isolate and move away from our human nature of being part of a group. So, how do you think the changes in the technological means and the processes could ensure the balance between emotional quotient and digital quotient?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think from uh, how we are seeing this world transform is that not a lot of organizations or not a lot of people were sure how we will survive not being close to each other, and everybody was doubting that, right? So uh, i
Yes.
know I know most of the organizations, although they said they are very pro flexi working, but everybody in the hindsight or in the back of their mind had a thought that I don't think work from home will work. If you look at the end of 2020, if you look at now in 2021, everybody has shifted their mindset from that perspective. Everybody thinks that, I know initially productivity was low. I know initially there was a problem because people were getting used to, people were scared, there was fear, what will happen. Most of the people have never stayed at home 24/7 for so long. They've not worked from home ever. There was a lot of things. People are not equipped to work from home. They don't have desks at their home. They don't have a proper capability. They don't have tools. They don't have equipment. So there was a lot of issue initially, and rightly so, because we scrambled to do that, right? And then as people uh, got used to it, as people evolved themselves around it, that's where things started to improve. Lot of focus also happened on two things, and I think both of them, and as you said, what's the difference and how that will work? I think both of them will have to go hand in hand. One is the emotional aspect of it, or how do you manage people wellness or well-being? How do you ensure you're focusing on their uh, mental well-being? So it's a lot of movement from just a focus on physical but also on mental now. So your emotion, that's all emotional aspect of it, right? So how do you help people manage their stress? How do you help people manage their loneliness? How do you help bring them socially together? What kind of things you're doing around that? How are you trying to give them uh, ways that they can navigate through it? And then comes around the digital aspect of it, because you can't just have people sitting at home and doing nothing if you don't have the right tools around it. So there is a collaboration that is required on both aspects of focus on mental emotional well-being and a focus on digital evolvement. How many of you thought that it will be successful to do entire year of schooling and education from home? How many of you thought that? I did not think about it.
So probably none of us.
Yeah. So how will you teach the entire college, entire university, entire school? How will you teach somebody from kindergarten to 12th standard and then beyond in colleges as well, right? Colleges are still better equipped, and students in colleges are still at a little bit more mature state. How do you teach students of grade 1, grade 2, grade 5 who are very young students who go to school not just to learn but also to talk to friends, to enjoy? How do you ensure that environment? Nobody would have thought school would be successful. And if you look at right now, the way my kids are getting trained from schools, the way the teachers have put in effort, the way schools have put in effort to ensure that they are looking at doing everything that they used to do in school on virtual environment right now. You've seen Zoom, you've seen uh, Google Talk, you've seen a lot of other Google Meet and other tools that have come up, which are now doing a lot of things, right? Who you are looking at me right now, my video right now. Do you know where I'm sitting? You don't know that because I have a virtual background behind me, right? I may be sitting in a pub. You don't know that, right? I may be sitting at my home. That's the connect that is now provided, and it gives you an environment. It gives you a good feel of connectivity, and that's why I said at the start, let's look at each other. We need to have that human connect, and that's where it is critical to keep both digital and human aspects of it balancing. One of the things that we did at our organization is, uh, as we moved virtually, we increased the connects that human resources has with people. We increased communication, we increased leadership connects, we increased one-on-one connects, because we wanted to give that aspect to people that we are connected to you. You're not alone. We increased the tools that people have, the access to uh, well-being tools that they have, wellness programs that they have. We did stress management, we did yoga mailers out. We said look at physical aspect. We did a whole 1.5 month program of physical fitness where we encouraged people to walk more. So we looked at multiple of those aspects, and then we did a lot of communication on how do you collaborate. We trained our managers to be able to talk to people better. We looked at manager upskilling, we looked at supervisor upskilling, we looked at how do you use tools better. We introduced a Microsoft Teams as a collaboration tool. We are introducing that and going into detail around that. So to answer that question, I think it needs to be a balance, and it needs to be a good collaboration between emotional and digital aspect of it, because you need to have that right mindset to be able to even work virtually. And then we took a call, right? As an organization, we took a call as that we need to start bringing people together slowly, so that people get used to uh, working in a hybrid environment. They are working at home, but then also getting a chance to come to office, meet with other people, collaborate, innovate, and work on that. So looking at multiple of those aspects.
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, any other questions, any other thoughts around this? Okay, so strategic HRM and emotional intelligence. Now let's talk about both of them together. You look at the bottom part of the slide and you look at some things that we talked about initially is what is strategic HRM, right? So we're looking at HR leading from the front, HR putting people at the center, HR looking at analyzing the current situation and telling the business leads, here is what it is, here is what is going to look at future. On all 3 points that I mentioned, again, I'll take an example of 2020. Leaders looked at HR and said, what do you want us to do? We want to survive. We want our business to continue. We want to look at how we can give our customers or our clients the right focus. But we are also aware that this is a unique situation. We are also aware that people are going to be fearful. People are going to be confused on what to do. What do you suggest? And that's where HR came into picture and said, let's look at putting a strategy together. Is how do you continue doing it, but then putting people at center. Think about yourself. If you need to be successful at home, what do you need? What all things do you need? What equipments do you need? What access do you need? What support you need? What leadership you need? What all you need? So that's where HR came into picture, and let's look at this. HR also came into picture in terms of analyzing what's happening in the world. So giving the leaders the right pulse of what's happening in pandemic, what is the government saying, what do we need to do during lockdown, what is unlocking, how do we give people the right message to be safe. And then if you're starting to bring people back to office slowly, steadily, how do you create a workplace that is safe for them? How do you create an environment that is safe for them? Now, what is happening is a lot of leaders are saying, tell us, what do we do about vaccination? What do we tell people? And so HR is again coming into picture, is talking to other organizations, talking to leaders, other organization, talking to government, talking to agencies, and saying, what is the situation on vaccine? What can we do as an organization to support it? Right. So it's all about helping strategize, what do we do? How do we navigate different situations? Fourth aspect is then articulating a desired future. It's okay, 2020 was tough. Now, what should we do in 21? Leaders will ask HR is do you think 2021 will become better? Do you think we all will start working from home, or we will start working from office? What do you think will happen with COVID-19? Will it go away? Will schools start again so that parents are able to go back to office and not worry about their kids? That's the kind of question people are asking. What is the future that is looking at? And again, we need to understand, talk to people, try to formulate a larger plan, and maybe look at 2 3 different plans that we can provide to business. If this happens, let's look at this way. If this happens, let's look at this way. And if this happens, let's look at this way. Let's start here. If things change, we go to plan B. If things change, we go to plan C. Right? So we look at creating all those things. And then you implement the objectives. Again, with a vision in future, implement short-term objectives. Let's try and achieve this. If it doesn't work, let's try to change and achieve this. Let's look at constantly reviewing, and then the monitoring comes into picture. How are we moving ahead? Let's talk about a lot of things. Let's look at data. Let's look at people pulse. How are people feeling? Are people happy or not happy? Is our clients happy or not happy? How we are progressing? So that's where whole strategic HRM comes into picture. And to help that, your emotional intelligence come into picture, which is the points above, is talking about how do you achieve that strategy. If you are not aware, if you're not emotionally intelligent, if you don't have your own understanding, if you're not able to assess situation, assess people, then you're not able to help strategize. And that's where your emotional intelligence come into picture, is acquiring, developing, retaining the business aligned talent. What does business want? Again, an example that I gave from a BPO is, you can't have gig workers in a large scale and working in BPO. So you acquire the right talent, you develop them to be more successful, and then you work on retaining them. You work on creating a high performing team. Right? And what is a high performing team? A high performing team will be one which is has the ability to look at how do we continue to do what the business is needing, what the clients is needing, in a way that is more collaborative, that is looking at not just short-term success, but building on those successes and continuing to perform at a large scale and at a high scale. Right? That's what high performing team do. They just don't achieve something and stop. They achieve, they continuously improve and continuously do that. And how does HR do help in that? Is HR works with them to understand how they can collaborate better, how teamwork is happening, training them, providing the right leadership skills around it, helping them navigate through that. Right? So becoming sensitive and perceptive to other people's emotion, and having the ability to intuitively facilitate the performance based on all of the data that you collect. So that's where it can help. The other aspect of that is uh, motivating and synergizing people. When we motivate and synergize people, people are more creative. I think one of you made a comment at the start is, if people are not motivated or happy, they don't become productive. Absolutely right. You need to have people that are motivated, that are synergized, and then they become more creative, right? So HR will work on ensuring that there is synergy, there is motivation through different programs, through managing continuous performance, through recognition, through employee engagement, and through other things, right? And when people are creative, they will develop new solutions, they will be more innovative, and they will be more progressive or responsive towards the complex demands of the society. Providing a great employee experience, or a great experience to the employees, as you may call it. We are moving towards just being focusing on employee engagement to an employee experience. And what is the difference around it, right? So employee engagement is a part of employee experience. Experience is your whole life cycle journey, and what do you feel around those moments that matter in your life cycle. So for example, how do you feel before joining an organization? What kind of experience you have? On your first day, how do you feel in an organization? On the first 30, 90 days, how do you feel in an organization? As you're growing, as you're developing yourself, how do you feel? Are you getting recognition? Are you liking the workplace? Are you liking your manager? Are you enjoying with your team? How do you feel that when your job changes? How's that experience of a job change? Do you enjoy transition into a new role? Do you enjoy getting promoted? If you don't get promoted, are you looking at a different aspect of that? When you when you have a personal milestone, like you get married, you have a child, what does the organization support you in that area? How do you feel around that? When you exit an organization, what is your experience around that? Are you happy? Are you leaving it a happy note? Are you feeling sad leaving it? Or are you feeling that I don't like this organization and going it, right? So that's the whole employee experience that you're looking at. And that's where, again, HR will come into picture, is providing a great experience to employee. And what helps is when people have a great experience, they help strengthen organization culture. They help making the organization more resilient towards any kind of change that happens. People will become more flexible. They will even stretch their flexibility. Again, taking last year's example, a lot of employees, a lot of you as students became more flexible in terms of how you wanted to achieve a lot of things. All of this will ensure that there is a greater competitive advantage for the business in the market. Right. So again, doing a great experience will help the business grow. Looking at building a modern workplace. Now, a modern workplace is characterized by open and transparent communication. It's characterized by teamwork. It is characterized by mutual respect around employees. It's not just the facility, it's the culture, it's the communication, the teamwork, the collaboration. How do you build that modern workplace? Right? That's again how HR can help define some of the values that an organization has and then build it over a period of time. change management, absolutely critical. And again, a lot of examples that I gave around pandemic and what happened in last year, but change is happening every day, right? And it could be a small change or a big change that happen. It could be something that you can plan for. It could be something unplanned for. And that's where, again, helping teams and people manage change better throughout whatever challenges this face, rising focus on people, right? Raising focus on their well-being and on the increasing demands of work arrangements. That's where you can manage change better, right? So uh, employees go through a lot of challenges in getting through that change. So how do you help through that? And again, as an HR, strategically you can do a lot of things to help. Your managers have a great change management plan. How do they communicate? What things they're talking about? Any questions right now? I can hear somebody. Okay. Navigating multi-generational and multicultural challenges. What do I mean by that, right? So at this point, it is not easy to be an HR person. Why? Because right now you'll have 3 or 4 different generations working together. So you have the baby boomers, you have the Gen X, Y, and Z all working together. What does that mean? You'll have somebody fresh out of college as an intern or just joined the organization working. You'll have uh, their team leads who are probably 10 years, 8, 10 years experience. You'll have their senior managers who will probably be, you know, 10, 15 years experience. You'll have somebody with 20, 21 years experience. You'll even have somebody with 30, 40 years experience. You have that multi-generational challenge that you'll have to navigate. And that's not easy because there is a huge gap in terms of how a person will think at with 30, 40 years experience versus somebody who has got 0 or 1 year experience. There's a huge gap in their thought process, a huge gap in how they have gone through and worked through in reaching that position versus somebody who's been very new and who's born and brought up in an environment which is very digital, which is very fast moving, fast paced environment with everything they want to know as of yesterday. Said, I should know everything right now. And then there is that generational gap where people are okay to not know everything. They want to understand, they want to take their time, right? So working through that gap is difficult. And then you add multicultural challenges. There are organizations that are sitting across different geographies, uh, different cities, right? So how do you help navigate that challenge? So again, that's where HR comes into picture and your EI comes into picture is being aware, political acumen, organizational awareness, uh, your environmental awareness, understanding different cultures, and helping teams understand that. That's where EI comes into picture. And then HR's role is weaved as a central fabric of the organization. So when you look at a fabric, it has got a lot of threads, or when you look at the machine that I showed, it has got a lot of cog wheels, right? So HR's role is weaved as a central part of it to be able to navigate or create or stitch together that fabric or to create that uh, machinery that works together. And it is the duty, I would say, of the HR practitioners to bring in culture of emotional receptiveness, acceptance, empathy, for involvement, to engage, to motivate workforce. All that will lead the organizations towards the goals that they set. So that's how I would like to summarize this in terms of how your emotional intelligence aspect of an HR is important to build into the strategic part of HR management. I know we have about 10 minutes, so I'll stop now. I don't have anything else to share. I'll just wait for your questions and anything you would like me to share more, go into deep, or answer any of your thoughts.
Sir, I have a question.
Yes, please.
On a spectrum of leadership from absolute laissez-faire to absolute autocratic, on a cultural level, where do, cultural level, I mean geographically as well, where do you think what kind of leadership fits on a average basis?
I think it depends on different culture. Where we have certain cultures that are very direct, that have leadership that is absolutely direct, and they might not be wrong in that aspect, right? And there are other cultures that are not as direct as it is required. For example, if you talk to somebody in Europe, or you will see their responses to be very direct. If somebody in Europe would want to not do certain things, they would say they don't want to do it. If you talk to somebody in India, you will notice that there is a difficulty that people have in saying no. And to understand that, you'll have to understand the cultural differences, right? When education perspective in Europe is different, they get to choose what they do in their education. They can say no to their parents. They can say no to their teacher. You can't do that in India at an education level. How many of you have grown up and were able to say no to your parents? That's the cultural difference, right? And that's how we've been built. We've been educated at home, at school, is it's wrong to say no. You do what I say. And then when you start working and when you start leading, it becomes difficult for you to say no. So that's one difference you have, right? So there's a difference in culture. However, as we are growing into a more multicultural organization, a lot of organizations are across different globes. That's where leaders are becoming more intelligent. And of course, HR is helping, the training is helping building that up, the awareness is helping that. And HRs and leaders with their inherent style may be inability to say no, but because of their awareness and self-awareness and self-management, they can navigate situations and learn. Although I don't like saying no, I want to say no, or I can say no when it is required. And that's where EI comes into picture again. Is as a leader, if you have a inherent inbuilt style of being very authoritative, can you change it depending on the situation that needs to be? That's what the difference right now I'm seeing in the whole leadership. If you look at progressive leadership, if you look at smart leaders, if you read about Steve Jobs, for example, he was a great innovator. If you look at Steve Jobs, he did fantastic. His innovation skills, his technology skills were great. Was he a good people manager? That is somebody that you would not call as a great people manager or a people leader, because you've read through a lot of that, and you say he was not very good with people. But he knew how to use the people, how to make sure they are felt useful, to help them grow in the organization and help the organization grow. So he knew how to navigate that. If you look at other leaders who are looked upon right now, I mean, Elon Musk. You look at his thought process. Again, a different kind of leader where he brings people together and he takes things together while being innovative from his mindset as well. So I think it's more about leaders understanding what their inherent style is, but also being able to change their style as the requirement needs.
Okay, so due to this multiculturalism and globalization, where do you think leadership scales are tipped towards? Laissez-faire or absolute authoritarianism? Like, where is it leading towards? Not completely, but like if we make a point, like two access points.
I think authoritative leadership style is no longer uh, successful, I would say. So if you look at the successful leadership style, it's more about uh, if you've heard the term of servant leader, if you've heard the term of people, leaders who are being able to successfully lead multinational organizations or grow organizations to a large scale, are leaders who are more people centric, are more from a perspective that they think about taking people together. If you look at goals that an organization set, if you look at the vision values that organizations set, a lot of leaders now have employee experience, employee engagement, people centricity as one of their top goals in the organization, which means now they focus finances as much, or sorry, people as much or more than finances in the organization, right? So it's tending towards that scale right now.
Towards laissez-faire.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Sir, I have a question.
Sure.
Sir, as an HR professional, people generally faces a huge problem of high attrition. So
Mhm.
what are the ways or techniques through which we can raise retention rate? Does HR analytics can play a role in it?
Absolutely. I think analytics is, like, in last couple of years has taken a lot of center stage, and I think in next 2 to 3 years it will take even larger scale of how we are looking at people, how we are looking at managing different aspects of people. So attrition is again a very key aspect, right? One of the things that analytics could give you, and analytics can come from different aspects. It could come from pulse checks, it could come from a lot of connects that you have, a lot of discussions that you have, feedback that people provide, a lot of that comes in. It can also you can also create an early warning sign or EWS, and you can create a lot of those things where you try to talk to people. During those talks you understand what their thoughts are they going to stay or leave, and that kind of data can help leadership manage attrition to a large scale. And if you know the pulse of people, if you know, for example, if I know that uh, right now it's COVID is still uncertain situation, I know that people are feeling safe working from home. I know they will feel fearful coming to office. Should I force them that all of you 100% should be in office no matter what? Otherwise, you'll have implications. If I do that, I know for sure there will be mass attrition. People will leave because people fear their safety, security, their family safety, security more than they fear for the organization. If I balance it out and say, let's come, few people come, some people stay at home, I'll rotate, or these kind of people permanently work from home, they don't require to come to office. I am helping navigate that situation, right? And then people will feel that the organization is doing something for them. If I provide them right training, right skills, if I provide them right environment at home, if I support them, if I don't pay cut, if I give them money, if all of that, and still working from home, they will feel valued. But how do I know people want this? Is because of analytics. I talk to people, I understand what they're going through, how comfortable they are at home, how do they want to come back or no. So it's all about, very rightly said, all about analytics. How do you use people analytics, data analytics, and drive that? And attrition is definitely one of the aspects to look at. Like I said, last year, a lot of organization would have faced two different aspects. One is either they would have to lay off people, so they would have to think about which kind of people to lay off, which is again analytics will bring into picture, or they would have thought about why are people not leaving. Right? That's a different problem to have. Attrition would be very low, and you need some attrition to keep the churn in the organization fresh. Right? So there could be, again, we'll have analytics behind it saying why are people not leaving? Are they scared? Are they or are they really very happy with us? What are the aspects of it? So it's both points around that.
So I
Okay,
would
sir.
like to
Thank you.
raise a question.
Mhm.
It's
Since we've
12:30.
established that AI and EI can be allies, so what do you think would be its possible risks and benefits, in the sense that there have been developments of emotional AI? So how do you think it would affect the workforce behavior?
Uh, I, honestly, I have been hearing this for a long time now, right? I think I've been hearing about uh, robots taking over us. I've been hearing about in future robots will be able to do everything that a human does.
Yes.
I don't think it's true. I think AI will help. AI will become a little bit more intuitive. AI will have some aspects of things that they can do it, but will they be able to do it everything that a human does? I don't think so. I think there has to be a human aspect of it. There is a requirement for people to be stronger. On the contrary, what I think is as machines start becoming more intelligent, as they start to do certain things more, humans will evolve. Humans will evolve to a perspective that they will always be better than machines. So AI and EI will go hand in hand. There will be some aspects of EI that a machine can learn, but it can't replicate what a human will do. Right? So there will always be a need for a human to be able to understand the way that we can think about different scenarios. We can build it into a machine, but there will always be a scenario that even we have not thought of. So how will we teach machine? But when a scenario comes which even we have not thought of, we can still navigate through it because of the AI and intelligence that we have. And then we'll be able to teach machine, right? So machine will always be relying on humans to be able to continuously teach them to grow them. So AI and EI will go hand in hand, but one machine doing both and removing the human aspect will never happen.
Yes, sir. Okay. Thank you so much.
So I have a question.
Mhm.
So as you talked about layoffs, that how last year many companies had to take a tough call of layoff.
Yeah.
Do you think early retirement can also be an option which organizations can adopt? And in what situation do you think early retirement can be offered rather than laying off certain people?
I'm sure a lot of organizations would have done that, especially if you look at senior leaders. Uh, if you look at older organizations that are there in the system for a long period of time, right? So organizations that are here for 10, 15, 20, 30 years, over a period of time, they would become top heavy. And if you become top heavy, you don't know what to do with your leaders at some point, right? You either they self move somewhere else, or then you try to move them into different roles. And in certain situations, organizations do offer them an option of early retirement, right? So their retirement age would be 60 plus or 65, whatever that age would be in different countries. And at 50, 55, round about that period, you say, you still have 5 years to go, and we know that value you bring into the organization. However, we don't see a growth for you. We don't see that. Plus, you are expensive to us, right? You're not. We're paying a lot to you, so we offer you this. You early retire, you pay a severance package, you give them options, and then you ask them to leave. I've seen a lot of organizations do it. Also, what they do is you retire, we pay you this, but you can come back and we'll contact you and we'll keep you on a consulting role. So when we need your knowledge and skill, we'll ask you to come and we'll pay for you. So that's again an option that people are doing that, especially at the senior level. I think at junior level, of course, it doesn't make sense, but with that knowledge, with that skill, people will do a lot of such things. Is how do you keep that knowledge, how do you keep tapping into that knowledge, but also give them something that is more, so moving into a gig working, right? So when you need, you call them, otherwise you don't have them on your payroll.
Okay, so I have a question.
Mhm.
Like, what's your general approach to deal with the problematic performance issues coming around as an HR?
uh, for any kind of performance or disciplinary issues that we face, the general approach is to look at it from a holistic perspective. So let's take an example where a manager would come and say, this employee's performance is not good, or the manager would come and say, this employee is having disciplinary issues. We don't take one view of it, we go into detail around it, right? So that's what we encourage our HR teams to do, and our managers also to do when they raise such requests. Is first of all look at a holistic point of view. Is that you are saying this is a disciplinary issue, because you have this, let's try to understand why this happened. Let's talk to the person, why, like I gave an example of the performance management issue is asking a lot of questions, going deep, understanding what is this, collecting data. We try not to let perceptions take over. We try to let data talk more about it. So if you're saying performance is not good, provide me data. What was the role expectation? What were the goals that were set? How did you measure it? What is the measurement output of it? Is it successful or not? Is everything going well or not? Then if it comes out, yes, the performance is not good, then we put together a plan and give an opportunity for the person to overcome that performance gap and say, okay, we'll give you an opportunity. We will give you support. We'll give you training that you require. We'll give you focus that you require. We'll revisit your goals. We'll ensure that you have everything that you know, and we'll monitor through a very close perspective is how you're navigating and growing into that. So we provide a lot of support in that, and many times we see that a person comes out of it successfully as well. So managing performance is not from a perspective that the person is not doing well, let's put some objectives and let's ask them to go. It's about first try and understand what the issue is and try and bring them up the curve. If that is not successful, then we say that it's not working well for us or for you, and it's better that you look at a different role if it is there in the organization, or then you look at some other organization. So that's how we look at managing that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Sir,
Yep.
sir, how do the HR people identify or determine the motivation factors of the employees?
Motivation again is very personal, right? So you try and provide individualized options to different people. So for some the motivation will be money, for some the motivation will be uh, great work that they are able to do, for some the motivation will be great work environment, for some the motivation will be career growth that they see, learning that they get. So different aspects of that, right? So as an HR, you try to understand what are the different motivations that people will have, and that you understand by talking. Again, data is very important, talking to them, talking through their managers to understand what motivates different kinds of people, and then you provide a suite of things, right? You create a suite of things that say we provide all of this to you. Now you choose what motivates you and then stay in the organization. So one thing that we need to ensure is people are paid such that money is no longer a motivating factor for them. And if you read a book by Daniel Pink, it is called as Drive, that talks about motivation being not just about money. It's being purpose, it's being autonomy, it's being certain other things that people look at. And how do you help provide different aspects that people can choose, that okay, this organization provides me, it pays me well, takes care of my monetary value, and then it provides me 4 or 5 different aspects that I can choose, which I get motivated towards. So you look at providing all of that, because it's difficult if you have a large organizations to individually look at people and say, you get motivated, so I provide you this. You provide a suite where people can choose from.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your active participation. Since we have a time constraint, we'd encourage one more question and
I
then
think
we'd like to conclude the
Ria is
session.
sharing her hand, so maybe Ria just ask that question.
Yes, sir. Actually, sir, I have one question in my mind, like how to respond when a coworker challenges you, like emotionally, in a organization.
Uh, Again, it comes to perspective is, do I understand, how do I react to it? So if somebody is shouting on me, and I know if somebody shouts on me, my first reaction is I become angry and shout back. If I know that, and I know if I shout back, the situation will become worse, I can manage myself, right? I can say I will not shout. And then I will be able to manage situation better, because I'll calmly respond to it. I will look at person and say, I know that this is not the right situation, you're not in the right mindset, you're not taking it in the right way. Can we discuss it after some time when you have thought through, when you've calmed down a little bit, right? I have had a manager many years ago when I was sitting in a room with him, doing some discussion, and he suddenly became angry and shouted on top of his voice on me, and he even picked up something that was there in the training room, in the meeting room, and threw at me. Right, so I've had that manager. So people will challenge you in different aspects. Your colleagues will talk to you about it. Colleagues will create different environments about it. What did I do in that situation? I just stood up, walked out of the meeting room, and then went away. If I would have reacted in a different way, if I would have shouted back, it would have created a different situation. One, because he was my manager, and nobody would have understood why I shouted back, right? Because he was at a certain level. But since I did that, I was able to think through how would I now react, because he's already done something. Will he come back and talk to me and apologize? If yes, then I'll react in that way. If not, I will escalate it. I will talk to HR, I will talk to his leader and say, this is what happened. I need your support in that, right? So it's all about understanding how you would react in different situations and then managing yourself. You can't manage somebody else all the time. You can't say, okay, I will ensure that Ria doesn't shout on me, or when Ria shouts on me, I will tell her to not shout on me, and then she will listen to me. That will not happen. So you'll have to ensure that when Ria shouts on me, I will react in a way that will help manage that situation better.
Okay, sir. So basically, sir, it's all about controlling and understanding, right?
Right.
That's why, sir, what is the role for like when you have such situation that arises in an organization? Uh, I think people analytics play a role here. I think.
As an HR, if you're called upon to resolve certain things, then of course you have to understand the reasons behind it, right? And then people and data analytics both come into picture. Is understanding why that situation happened. Why did somebody shout? Why did they fight? Why did they do certain things? And then once you understand that, then you will be able to help resolve it better. So conflict resolution comes from that perspective, and you can then think about, okay, based on what I've understood, based on what I've talked to different people, or two people fighting with each other, I've understand both perspective, I've gathered the data, then I can help navigate that and say, okay, based on this, there are 5 strategies of conflict management. One of it I will apply and say, this is what we should do, either collaborate or look at other things and doing that. So I think right in saying that, yes, data and people analytics will help.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir, for such an insightful and interactive session. It was our honor to hear from you today and know how HR has evolved into strategic HR. Your perspective on how not just data analytics, but also people analytics plays an important role in the HR domain was enriching. Further, it was enlightening to know the importance of managing emotions and how important emotional intelligence has become. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us today.
Thank you very much, Ruchi, and thanks, Gaurav, for the opportunity. I wish all of you are very happy in 2021, and I wish all of you very good success. And I hope to meet you someday, and I hope to work with you someday. I think HR is a very small world. I hope to work with you someday. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you,
sir.
Sumit.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you so
Bye.
much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We have
Thank you,
connected
sir.
after
Thank you, sir.
thank you
Thank you,
very much,
Gaurav.
30 years.
Yes, Gaurav. Talk to you soon, Gaurav.
Yeah,
Call you.
yeah. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks for your time on a Saturday morning.
Absolutely. My pleasure.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Yeah, Gaurav, bye. Thanks. But thanks,
Thank you.
Sumit. Bye.
Thank you.